Hi, Arjun and Eric. How are you?
Good, how are you?
All right. So, ready to get going?
Yep.
What's the plan with this podcast? What would you like to do with the podcast?
So we were hoping to discuss basically why we were running some of your policies, your Keystone policies, and just upload it to our things like social media, Instagram, YouTube.
There is a lot of audio interference with you, Arjun. There's like a buzzing sound.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, there's like a little squeaking sound as well. How are you, Eric?
I'm well.
Your audio is clear. It's very good.
Yeah, I'm just using Apple earbuds, so it's pretty reliable.
Very nice.
Eric, can you hear me?
Yeah, this is good.
All right, great. Okay, let's just give it like a few seconds, and then so we can clip out when we start recording and post this. Hi guys, this is Forward Feature, the go-to news website for politics and current affairs. I'm Arjun.
And I'm Eric.
And today we're interviewing Rishi Kumar, a high-tech executive, Saratoga councilman turned politician, and congressional candidate for the 18th district seat in California. So, Rishi, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running?
Well, I'm an anomaly politician. Never expected to be in the world of politics, but it's an opportunity for me to make the world a better place, and it's made me very happy to be out there serving my community. And it started with a run for delegate and executive board member of the California Democratic Party, and that turned out to be a great outcome. And we ran for city council, got reelected with the most votes in the 60 years election history of Saratoga. And we have some very, very unique agenda for Silicon Valley that centers around the economy, that addresses the challenges of a post-COVID-19 world that we can all sort of see how it's going to play out. It's going to impact a lot of people over the next few years. And we intend to roll up our sleeves, be in the trenches like we have always done in taking on these types of challenges and addressing them. In the city of Saratoga, there were a few big challenges that we took on, rising burglaries or pushing back against a water utility company. And we, as an activist, the role that we have taken on for more than a decade now, we always believe in stepping up and addressing them, and it's no shying away. So it's been a good story playing out, and we are looking forward to this run, winning in November, and taking this energy and leadership to Washington.
Yeah, so you've done a great job in Saratoga, as we've seen with those numbers. And more impressively, your primary numbers. I think Anna Eshoo is a 28-year incumbent, which is already impressive. And you're also coming at her from her left. So why do you think that is? Why do the people of the 18th district want to change, do you think?
Well, in the last, if you go back to the 2016 primary elections, Bernie Sanders ended up getting about, I would say, 45% of the votes. And then in 2018, we had Elizabeth Warren and Bernie. They ended up with about 43% of the votes. So I think consistently the progressives are at about 40 to 50%, depending on the district you are in. And running as a progressive, which Congresswoman Eshoo has never been challenged from her left. And we stand for Medicare for all, we stand for no pac money, and we stand for the Green New Deal. So these are some key defining elements of our policy agenda, and it does not fall in Congresswoman Eshu's realm of policies. So this is a good story. I mean, I think the progressives are rallying around someone like me because we put together a summer internship, and we had over 1,000 interns, and our volunteers come from 28 states. So we are very, very encouraged with the support we are getting, and we clearly see a path to victory.
Very nice. So you consider yourself a progressive, and I think that's great. We've seen a lot of progressives taking over seats which were once controlled by incumbents and career politicians like Anna Eshu. We've seen AOC and so many others. So where would you figure yourself in? You consider yourself a progressive capitalist. How would you define that?
Well, I think coming from the world of tech and Silicon Valley, I bring my own unique brand of politics. And we categorize it as a progressive capitalist, someone who's got socially liberal values, who really wants to take care. For example, our campaign started in the poorest section of San Jose because I believe that their voice has not been heard. Now, the big issue we have here is the income inequality. We have huge challenges with housing. The ones who don't have it are being forced to leave the area. The artists, the musicians, they're all leaving this area, and that is creating a culture which is not very progressive, which is not something we like to have here in Silicon Valley. So these are driving forces with respect to how we have defined this particular campaign. And I think the winds of change are sweeping the country, like you say, Arjun, and progressives across the United States are winning. And me as a progressive running and winning here, we can not only address some of the core challenges that have been completely not paid heed to by our politicians, but also there is the energy behind resolving some of the big challenges with healthcare, with transportation, and even with climate change. So we are pumped up. We are ready to serve.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. People are leaving California. Just a few weeks ago, we saw Joe Rogan. I think he's moving to Texas now. Um, so why people are leaving, but it's surprising because California has the highest taxes in the nation. Healthcare costs, like you said, are incredibly high compared to other parts of the US. So California, how come these areas have the highest taxes, but they have such large issues? And how would you go about fixing that?
Yes, so I think part of it is, you know, it's a lot of career politicians who seemingly don't have a sense or don't have a perspective in terms of what the core challenges are. And for example, when you look at PG&E and the problem with electricity we have here, and with the Paradise Fire that happened, that was completely PG&E was responsible for it. Our elected leaders hold PG&E to regard to shut down their fossil fuel plants, but they don't hold them to fixing their infrastructure. And when that happens, PG&E does what they are told to, because they are regulated. And to some extent, the problem also lies. Obviously, I think PG&E, it's a for-profit company. It should be run in a kosher way, which it probably is not. But also, it behooves our elected leaders to make smarter choices and hold them accountable and make sure that they are upgrading their infrastructure as well. And when you look at, for example, programs that are launched, I think we have to. You look at AB5, for example. It's Assembly Bill 5, and it might essentially lead to Uber and Lyft leaving the state of California. And why is that? Because with the gig economy, I think AB5, it is structured from uh, a standpoint of helping workers, and the heart of the bill is in the right place. But in terms of the impact, apparently 2 million people in California have had to move the state because companies here can no longer hire contractors because of AB5. And now companies here are hiring people from Nevada or other states because they are not impacted by AB5, Assembly Bill 5. So I think California needs to operate a little bit smarter, in terms of what we are doing. And the other day, I heard of a dog shelter in San Martin that the Board of Supervisors had funded $32 million. And why not spend that money on homelessness? I think there is homelessness here in California is greater than the rest of the 49 states. So I think we have to make these smarter choices and make it easier for people to stay here and thrive here. And I believe we are making it more and more difficult as the years goes by. Now, one final thing is, we are a blue state. We have a majority both in the assembly and the Senate. And when you don't have the checks and balances, sometimes you're not paying heed to what else is out there. So I think those checks and balances are sort of very, very important to make sure that we are making these proper choices for the people. I always talk about people-centric behavior, and I believe California can do a better job.
So are you saying that the biggest problem is that there's not, I think one of the hallmarks of your campaign is having the smart, data-driven campaign. You're using numbers and you're thinking smart. And how would you go about implementing that?
So, let's take an example, right? When you look at, for example, the stimulus package, we had the PPP loans, we had the EIDL loans. And, when you look at the EIDL, it was been managed by SBA and the site kept crashing. And then when you look at PPPs, they were regulated by the banks. And the banks became middlemen, essentially. And what the banks did, what was a PPP? It was the Paycheck Protection Program. And essentially what it was allowing is for companies that are less than 500 employee companies, they would receive the stimulus funds so that they can distribute it. They can keep the business going. That was the intention, and they wouldn't need to fire people. Now, as it turns out, the bank was the middleman, and what they said was, we'll only give it out to our top customers first. And they sort of regulated that, and the ones who really needed the cash, they were asked to wait. And then the money ran out. And the process was very complicated. You had to fill out a lot of forms, provide a lot of information, and it was not a very smooth process. So what's a data-driven campaign? A data-driven campaign is based upon two things. One is existing data, and then you are connecting the dots with all these different types of data to make decisions, right? So how would you apply that to the PPP? So we all these businesses, they have tax filings, right? And we have access to that data. So what would it take for us to make sure that we look at their tax filings, look at the appropriate, pull out, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 elements of that and figure out, how much money that needs to be sent over as a stimulus paycheck into these companies so that they could keep their businesses going. Now, what happened was the checks that were sent out to the Kentucky Fried Chickens of the world, millions of dollars that they never really needed. But when you do a true data-driven government, you can sort of figure out, who are the ones who really need the money, and making sure that the money gets to them. And finally, when you look at the economic indicators, in terms of what we need to do to keep the economy going, we have lots of economists that we talk to. We can essentially automate a lot of these features and functions without relying upon people. Economic indicators, can we dial it a notch here, can dial it a notch there, and make it a lot more of a vibrant, robust economy, especially in the challenges of the COVID-19. So those are some ideas we have. When you look at, for example, immigration, there is do we really have a sense as to how H-1Bs, the working visa, is impacting the economy of the United States? I think there are a lot of myths that propagate with immigration, and we truly don't have a sense. So much of it is just talk. But why don't we bring in the data? Why don't we bring in the data and look at, how is this working visa impacting the economy of the United States? So those are some ideas we have, a data-driven form in terms of everything. And I'll give you a quick example of that, right? When it came to the water utility company, it's a very powerful utility company, and we wanted to push back and fight it. And how could you do that? And very simple, we said, let's track, how we can send these protest emails out to California Public Utility Commission. Let's engage the people, first communicate to them what the problem is, Then we engage them with respect to what the solution is. Thirdly, we tell them who the decision-making authority is, because people don't even know that, right?
Yeah.
Tell them who the decision-making authority is, and let's direct the people to the authority, right? This is what we did. And we said, the volume of emails, we need to track how many emails we are sending out. So it wasn't like 20 emails. We would make sure that we are at least sending out a few hundred emails every time a rate hike was proposed. And tracking that, making an app, making it easier for people to protest, right? That is the
Yeah.
form of data-driven government we need. And so far, we have rejected when you suspended 8 water rate increases. So when you apply that data-driven framework to problem solving, the results are tremendous because you're not shooting in the dark. Everything is very concerted. You're channeling your energies into a very, very specific direction. Now, Arjun, let me talk about a campaign, right? Our campaign is a data-driven campaign because
It
we're
is.
not shooting in the dark. We have a very, very process-oriented campaign, which is what we have done
Absolutely.
with every campaign that we have run. I mean, in 2014 was the very first big campaign we ran in the city of Saratoga. And my detractors, when it was all done, they said, Rishi, I didn't support you in the campaign. You won. Congratulations. But, that campaign was like, wow, I've never seen anything like that in the city of Saratoga, right? That's what we put together, right? And this is the nature of what engineers like me, geeks like me can bring to
Yeah.
politics, which is what I'm really excited. I think that we are going to impact some big challenges in Washington. We don't play partisan politics. We are out there solving problems, and we'll bring that data-driven government. We'll be talking about it almost on a daily basis to make sure that our government will engage and get those the right elements going to ensure that we are addressing the big challenges. Sorry about a long-winded response, but this
Fine.
is, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about that.
Of course. Yeah, that is a great thing, to have a smart plan that's backed by information. Eric, you had a question?
Yeah, so you talked about using data. Like for instance, for the companies and PPP loans, how would you get the data? Would you hire like private contractors to look at fiscal reports, or would you like ask the companies to send them like more data?
Yep, good question. So essentially, much of the data is there in the tax filings, and all we need to do is pull that data together. So, you know, maybe there is software that currently exists, but when we're looking at the PPP loans and they are defining a very structured format that you have to, when we are asking for data, we said submit this. How much payroll have you had over the last year? How much payroll did you have 6 months before that? All that kind of stuff. That data is already there because that data can be pulled together. Perhaps it's different sources. I'm not really sure how that works at the back end, but it's not rocket science. Pull that data together, compile that, and based upon that, you can have key conclusions in terms of, okay, this company deserves so much. That
So
data.
I want to circle back to one thing you mentioned, which was the PPP. So you mentioned about big businesses, making off with the majority of the money, and smaller businesses were left to suffer. And I think slowly, as the U.S. starts to recover, and economically, we've been hit hard. How do you plan on helping out small businesses? A lot of places like New York City, for example, Mayor Bill de Blasio doesn't really have a plan to open up indoor restaurants on the East Coast. So how do you plan to help out these smaller businesses that have really been hit hard?
So we have to get to an open economy faster, and we are constrained because I think the U.S. was just we didn't have our act together when it came to the pandemic, and New Zealand went down to 0 cases. So there is no short answer with this. I think we need to, the ones who are truly suffering, the white collar Silicon Valley workers, they all have their jobs, they are busy. I talk to friends and they say, look, we are busy from we are more busy than we were when we would go to work because the work has become like 7 days a week and they're all getting their paychecks. There is some sort of cutbacks happening here in Silicon Valley, but the ones who are the pizza shop owners, I go to restaurants and they are like it looks really dead. The other day we were in Mountain View on a Friday evening, and I think the number of people there were probably like 10% of normal, and that is like really sad. So how do we fix that? We have to get back to an open economy. So we talk about again, we look at data. What if we rolled out an electronic medical record, healthcare analytics to ensure that we identify our population that is most vulnerable in case of biowarfare or a pandemic, And we ask them to exercise prudence and caution, and the rest of the folks who are probably not at risk can get back. There are some countries of the world that never shut down, like Sweden, and that is an experiment that is still playing out. I think,
Yeah, the herd immunity.
yeah, the herd immunity. I don't think so. They have truly built that, but New Zealand had to postpone the elections because the COVID-19 emerged back, even though they had gone down to zero. So America didn't really, we are the most powerful nation in the world. I expect us to do things a lot better, and we need to approach that. So it's going to be part of a pandemic policy paper. Now, let's go back to the small businesses. They're really hurting. There's one way to fix it is to keep the stimulus packages going. And I'm a big believer of the $15 minimum wage. So $600 a week makes a lot of sense to me, in terms of helping out people so that they are out there spending the money. Because if you don't have the money, then you can't spend. And all these small businesses, the nail salons, the restaurants, they're all hurting also because people have really clamped down on their spend too. So it needs a concerted plan, and that's unfortunately is lacking in America today.
And a $15 minimum wage. So that, of course, I think that would really help people out. But right now, as we're recovering, would that really be viable? Because it would be, would that be a burden to business owners, smaller ones?
Well, actually, what I meant was from a standpoint of the stimulus package, right? When you
I
look at
see.
stimulus checks, you are pegging it to the $15. So I met with Andrew Yang here in Cupertino last year, and we talked about, that was the very first I heard of the UBI, and this was in the very early stages of his campaign. And I said, why $1,000? Why isn't it at the $15 minimum wage, and we make it $2,400 a month, right? So anyway, these are things that we need to figure out. But at this point, I think when we look at checks, stimulus checks that are arriving into people's bank account, I think we need to look at that from a standpoint of the $15 minimum wage.
Yeah. So the pandemic, obviously, that really was disappointing how the US responded, especially our healthcare system. Now you propose Medicare for all. Why do you support Medicare for all?
So Alex Azar, the Health and Human Services Secretary in March, he announced that, look, we might have a max vaccination when he was asked, but it won't be free. And some portions of society, some segment of society, they would may not be able to afford it, but then there's not a whole lot that we can do about that. So what do we want in America, where 50% of Americans can afford the vaccination, and the remaining 50% keep infecting each other? Is that the America we want? So I think the pandemic has clearly exposed the social net or lack of in America, and we need to make it better. And I believe the number one thing we need to do is healthcare. We have to define a Medicare for all, because there is so much greed happening right now with big pharma and the insurance companies. The insurance companies are getting like a portion. I mean, they are essentially given a rebate, and what they do is they don't give the rebate to the people. They don't, I mean, they are double dipping. So it's a very complex story of greed playing out in American healthcare, and we have to do better. And this is the right time. We have 118 congressmen who have signed up for it, not our representative, Congressman Anna Issue. And I'm not sure why. Is it related to all the big pharma money that she gets, number one, in the Congress? I'm not sure of that. But, we have to make a better choice of moving forward with Medicare for all.
Yeah, and you certainly make a point there. Anna Eshu, for our viewers, I think she's received over her career about maybe 16 to 18 million dollars in PAC money. So Rishi, I think one of the things which I admire about your campaign is your commitment to not accepting any. Why so?
Well, keep it for the people, right? This is, someone like me from high tech. When we jump into public service, we are there to really make a difference. It's not like activity for the sake of activity. It's not for a paycheck. It's not for sitting on my hands and enjoy the world of glamour. We are there to solve the big challenges. That's my motivation, which is why in the city of Saratoga, some of the seniors have said that, oh, Rishi, I've lived here for 50 years. I've never seen a council member like you. Now, with the recent fire in California, I've been busy. Like the last few days have been all about the fire. We have compiled a very informative website, lots of different maps, resources. even even different links to show how exactly our home is fire ready. There are lots of resources out there, right? And when we talk about data driven, we need to make sure that our people can have access to the data. So this is a probably one of the most comprehensive sites that we have put together. And the feedback I get from people is like, oh my God, I haven't seen any other council member do that, or any other elected leader for that matter, right? We move fast, we inform people, and we engage them with the problems, and we're also recommending solutions, right? So this is the nature of what someone like me brings with people-centric behavior. And that's the reason why we reject all the PAC money, no special interest group money. We don't want to be tied into anything. We want to be independent. The reason why we have done so well, Arjun, when you look at running for office here, I really don't have a base in Saratoga, because who is your base? Typically, there are certain districts in San Jose. That San Jose has 10 districts, and sometimes there is a Vietnamese district or a Chinese American district, and the right type of candidates keep winning from those districts with that right demographics. Saratoga has 10% Indian Americans, so I really don't have a base. So how does someone like me get the most votes in 60 years election history of Saratoga? The reason is because I do have a base, and that base stems from innovation, from technology, from people who are very smart, who are able to dissect the gems from the coal. And what they have clearly seen is that, hey, Rishi has a unique insight to politics. He's there not only informing, communicating, but he's also looking to address these types of challenges, and he's fearless. He's fearless, and we want to be fearless in Washington also. And that's the reason why we keep it simple. No PAC money, no special interest group money. Let's keep it for the people, and we'll be addressing the big challenges.
Yeah, for the people, I think that's a great thing. So one of the most concerning things we're seeing in Congress these days is this sort of splitting of ideologies. We're seeing conservatives and Republicans go harder right, and certain Democrats go harder left. Do you plan to bridge that? Are you willing to work across the aisle to find solutions?
Absolutely. I think that's the way to do it. And anything else would be not right. And we have to work together. And unfortunately, our politics has been completely broken. And sometimes I feel that a third party system is emerging because the two parties just don't want to work with each other. And my approach has been, let's keep the focus upon how we can solve the big challenges, the people problems, and then figure out, who you can work with. And I think with the shift that is happening in this country, a lot of new elected leaders are emerging. They'll get elected, and they have a different set of agenda. They are not the old school politicians. They're not part of the Washington establishment. They are there for the right reasons. They are there to serve. And I believe we'll have a lot of partners in crime to make sure that we are serving the people.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I really respect your campaign motto, getting things done. Forward Future, we're all about, nonpartisanship, because, it's not left, not right. We want to get things done. We want to have progress. And so I think it's really great that you're trying to work with people, not just with Democrats, not just with progressives. So actually talking about, Democrats specifically, people have been pretty divided about the whole defunding the police thing. What are your thoughts about defunding the police?
I think the police is essential for law and order, and I work pretty actively with them. And have we had any untoward cases here in my city? Not at all. And in fact, we are partnered well in reducing crime, and we are very cognizant of racial profiling. We don't play that game, but at the same time, when there is crime happening, we make sure that we sort of try to prevent and minimize and create deterrence in place, right? So very simply, we had a few Black Lives Matter webinars, discussions, and because I was looking to bolster my policy, and what we talk about is, let's give you an example: 58 hours of gun shooting training, whereas 8 hours of de-escalation. And we engage our police officers to go and rescue cats, or sometimes to deal with mentally challenged people. And I think we need to engage the social services, to prevent that. There was a case in right here in Silicon Valley many years ago, and this was a Vietnamese woman who was probably not mentally sound, and she had a mental health issue, and because of that, Because of that, it led to a situation where the cops were called, and the cops arrived into her home, and she was standing in the kitchen with a potato peeler, and she turned around with the potato peeler, and the cops thought it was a weapon, and they shot her.
Wow.
That's the story that plays out, right? I think we need to provide cultural training. So part of my policy is to ensure that we provide de-escalation. We engage social services groups, so we don't defund it, but we take portions of the fund and we reallocate to different purposes. That also includes training. We need to provide them cultural training, and we need to shift, because I think what has happened is, is there racism in the police force? I believe there is. And to some extent, we have to shift the culture, and instead of the baton being passed from one generation to another to the next, a baton of racism, for example, we need to pass on a baton of the proper culture. And those are key elements of what my agenda is with Black Lives Matter. And it has festered for many, many hundreds of years. It's time we move forward and we arrived at resolution. My take is, don't just talk, try to work on it and see how you can make change happen, and that's going to be our agenda in Washington.
And
So, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
All right, yeah. Building off of that, so some Black Lives Matter supporters, some have been talking about race with reparations. Like if you are, for instance, a single race, that you should be given some type of advantage. What do you think about that? To like repair for like, decades of like oppression. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes, I sort of agree with that. I mean, and let me firstly try to restate what I understand. I think which is there is a lot of oppressions that have happened for certain races, and they have been impacted. They have not had the opportunity to come back up. So when you look at, for example, dealing, you have to do, we call it in Silicon Valley, we call it root cause analysis. So why do we have this type of situation? Economically disadvantaged communities right here in Silicon Valley, when it comes to, let's say, the Hispanic community or the Black community, right? I mean, so we have to provide education as a fundamental mechanism of them rising up through the ranks, and then the racial disparity will hopefully disappear, or the economic disparity will disappear. When society comes together like that, it can be a very, very powerful message, which is what we have done, Eric. What we have done is we launched the Silicon Valley Lego Robotics Club, and also the entrepreneurship boot camps, to ensure that communities that don't have role models, we teamed up with Mayor Sam Liccardo of San Jose. We provided this training in the most disadvantaged districts of San Jose, to ensure that our young students who are middle school, high school, will see a gateway of economic success via tech and STEM, and just planting that seed that, look, this is how startups happen. We would talk about Facebook, we would talk about LinkedIn, and about all these companies that came up from nowhere and how they came up. And we showed them the mechanism of not only designing robots and programming, but also on the entrepreneurship side of actually creating projects and products, or creating like apps, programming and all that kind of stuff. In fact, the city of San Jose would provide the laptops for this type of work. So this is how we need to bridge the gap and make it better. And that's probably is, we have to ensure that communities that haven't had these types of opportunities, we are going over and beyond. Education is a huge component of my policy agenda. Vocational education, we need to, we need to make free community college education, which is already is right here in California for the most part, but also vocational education. Can we provide social media training? I think our young millennials, they really understand social media very well. They sort of like they are born with those type of skills. Why don't we teach them, send them to a 2-year associate's degree, and get them fired up to work in our economy that is working so well? And it has to be focused upon very specific economic zones. For example, in Detroit, it's all about car manufacturing. So perhaps that 2 years associate degree gets them an opportunity to be part of that auto industry. So anyway, I think those are some ideas that we have to bring everybody up.
Yeah, talking about colleges, what are your thoughts on the California Proposition 16?
Oh, ACA 5, SCA 5. It goes back. I do believe that its heart is in the right place in terms of what it wants to accomplish, but the mechanism is not right. So I believe that we need to look at economic disadvantage versus race. And what we need to do is we need to look at figuring out how we get the disadvantaged communities, have them create the education opportunity for them. For me, that is more important than looking at it from a racial perspective. So now you go back to what we just talked about with Lego robotics or the entrepreneurship boot camps or the education system that we talk about with vocational education. I think we need to bring up our the most the ones who don't have the opportunity, who have never had a college going dad or mom in the family, right? Or in generations, if you look back, nobody ever went to college, right? That's the opportunity. I think America, we are cutting ourselves short when we don't try to bring everybody up. This is the most powerful nation in the world, and we still have poverty, we still have homelessness. I think that's the lens I would like to view the problem at.
Do you think that the primary goal of education in Silicon Valley should be to equip the next generation for careers?
Yeah, of course, of course. And to some extent, I think we have failed in there because California is the 46th in the nation, or maybe 47th, and which is like really sad. We are like Silicon Valley is the 19th largest economy in the world. California is the sixth largest economy in the world, and we are not able to, like, why is education so bad? I mean, this is a travesty in the state of California. We can do better. And to some extent, when you look at STEM, we have had only one single Java programming class all the way from K to 12. So what I ended up doing was I was in a California department, a strategic computer science implementation panel that was launched by the California Department of Education. And we have defined a K to 12 curriculum for computer science. So every child from K to 12 starting 2022 will get a chance to learn computer science. We need to empower, and we need to essentially build a story with respect to education around the local economy. And I'm super glad that California is now going to be going down this path. In fact, every state should look at this model. What is the most the vertical that is thriving in that particular state? Where does the state get the economic prowess from? And then you try to build out an education system based on that, and also around a roadmap of building a future economy as well.
Very nice. Yeah, I think that's essential. So, how how would you say that California, how could you fix that? Would you refund schools? Would you raise taxes? What would your path be to sort of revitalizing the educational system?
Well, I think we need to bolster our educational system. And anyway, as a congressman, all you will have is the ability to express your voice with the California Department of Education, because it's a state of California program. But my take is any problem and all problems are part of my domain, because when you are in Congress, you have a platform, and you have the platform, you're able to speak about it, and you're able to engage the right type of people. The California superintendent, Tom Torlakson was, he was a good friend of mine, because that was my party connections. I used to talk to him about education, and he and his wife, May. And as a congressman, you will have these ability to have these meetings and discuss and try to figure out, if there's funding needed from the federal, from Washington, obviously I can help with that. But the onus is upon the state of California to make change happen. And I'll be speaking up and standing tall behind it, because I think the very future of California is contingent upon education, and we have to make the right choices.
So we're a little short on time, but we're going to try and touch on one more topic, and then we've got some questions from our audience, or our viewers, our followers. The Green New Deal. You are a supporter of that. So the Green New Deal, why would you support it? Why are you in favor?
Because plain and simple, I'll keep it short, it's about creating jobs, on a clean tech economy. And we're also addressing climate change. It's killing two birds with one stone, and that's the beauty of the Green New Deal.
Do you think that there's any problems with it? Do you think maybe I know that there's some criticism that it's too optimistic by 2030, and some have been saying 2050. Do you think that there could be changes?
I think it's never perfect, and so it's important to take the first step. And I always believe that And no matter how bad it is, if you feel it's the right thing to do and you don't have any other answers, move forward. And because you are addressing a problem, we are addressing the problem of climate change, which is what? It's a ticking time bomb. It's like in the
Yeah,
movies, right? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. We are going down to zero and kaboom, right? We don't want that. So we have to move forward. And I believe the Green New Deal is on the right path. Is it perfect? It's probably not perfect. So we have to figure out, how we can make it better over the next few years.
excellent. So I think that was the end of pretty much our main line of questioning. We're just going to go with the audience questions for now.
Yeah,
Eric, you want to
so
start off?
we have some random audience questions in a bowl. I'm just going to pick a random one. So, all right, we already did this one. Actually, yeah, no, we didn't. So you're currently running as a progressive candidate, right? So what would you say to Democrats who are still a little wary of these big changes that you are in favor of?
I think when you look at, let's talk about big changes, right? What would you qualify as a big change? We talk about 21 minutes, 21 counties. We're talking about urban planning. We're talking about transportation, traffic challenges, right? So that's a pretty big change, but it's the right thing to do. I mean, for the last 2 decades, we have not really addressed the traffic challenge. We have a travesty of a light rail that burns cash pretty much every day. And if I bike to work, I'll get there faster than using the light rail. So, we have to operate a lot smarter. And these are proposals that progressives are making because they stem from a standpoint of addressing the big challenges. So we have to pay heed to that. We have to look at it. Like, for example, with AOC's Green New Deal, when she first launched it, it was pretty radical, but people came around it. It was at a resolution stage, but it has led to so many different policy changes across the United States, right? So we have to approach and look at these smart options in a very, very open-minded approach.
All right, great answer. Let's get another one. So, all right, we did this one already. Let's see this. We already did this one too. Okay.
Oh, I've got a few on my phone.
All right, you could do them.
Rishi, who would you say is your favorite president of all time in U.S. history, and why?
Let's see. I like John F. Kennedy, because he was so inspirational. He was very young and he evoked passions in Americans, and he was actually representative of what true leadership is. With his messaging, his charisma, and with his leadership, he was able to engage every American. And this is what we need. We have too much of a broken partisan politics right now. We need a strong, charismatic leader who can bring everybody together and work together to build an America which is much more stronger compared to where we are today.
Strongly agree. On a more modern note, people are worried about the election. What would you do to address the concerns about mail-in voting?
About mail-in voting, I think USPS, I think we have to restore the integrity of the USPS because we have had mail-in voting here in California for many, many years. I mail in my ballots, and have I seen fraud? I haven't seen any fraud happen with mail-in ballots. And in fact, I would love to see any data that points me to that. So I believe, given the COVID-19 world we are in, the mail-in ballots makes a lot of sense.
All right, one of our viewers asked, what is your stance on universal basic income?
UBI, I'm all in favor right now in the COVID-19 world.
All right.
I think that's the end of the questions. Rishi Kumar, thank you so much for coming on. I think we had a great discussion. I really admire your campaign, and I wish you the best of luck this season.
Thank you so much. And Arjun and Eric, you're doing an awesome job. It's very commendable that young folks like you are engaging politically. So keep doing that work and engage your population and your the youth of the country. But more importantly, here is one thing, right? Make sure you ask people to vote. When the youth of your community turn 18, make sure you remind them to register to vote. Typically, I've seen metrics like 19% of the youth vote. We have to make it like 80%, and that's where the youth will truly take back the country and steer it back to the proper path. Some of the reason why we are in the problem we are in today is because there is disengagement. People don't see the ability to impact the big challenges, and they are sort of like, okay, disillusioned, right? So we need to, every vote counts, every youth counts. So please engage the population, get them engaged with respect to our political challenges, and get them to vote. I think it's very important.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Okay, great talking to you. Enjoy the rest of the day, and good to connect. Enjoy.
Yep.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Good luck,
Bye.
Rishi.
Good
Thanks.
luck.